talk about it. Tell me all about it. I'm here. I wanna know what's on your mind. Ooh, the world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about. Let's talk about. Yeah. Let's talk about conversations with Nicole.
Greetings. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am Nicole Everett, your host, and Conversations with Nicole is a talk show based in Tallahassee, Florida, focused on connecting the community through conversations. And today is what I call Wellness Wednesday. Wellness Wednesday is an opportunity for you, me, and my guests to talk about whatever it is we want to talk about. And today, we are tackling the topic of systemic oppression in the workplace. Systemic oppression in the workplace. So, this is going to be a good one. You all need to tag a friend and let them know that they need to be on here. My special guest is Dr. Christine Sainvil, and we are going to talk about the definition of systemic oppression, what are examples of oppression, and we want to get you involved. So tag a friend, let them know they need to be on here, and let us know where you are tuning in from in the comments. Put your city and your state so we can give you a shout out. I see my cousin Denise in Texas is already here as usual. Thank you so much for being here. Good evening. Good evening. So, a lot going on today, y'all. We lost Tina Turner, or should I say she transitioned. I also had some death in my family today, so I'm sending much love and strength and peace to my family in Virginia. We did have a loss today. And just, let's just be kind and compassionate towards one another, because this time here in this realm on this earth is so short, so short. So love on your people. All right. Love on your people. I see Mr. Michael Love on here from Jacksonville, Florida, Duval in the house. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. And we have Mr. Jerry Smith, DJ Groove in Tallahassee, checking in. Good evening. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. All right. So while others are joining us, I'm going to go ahead and read Dr. Sainvil's bio. Dr. Christine Sainvil is a licensed psychologist and owner of Serenity Envision, a private practice that provides culturally competent psychological services to clients in New York and Florida. Dr. Sainvil also serves as an adjunct professor at the University of Miami, all about the U. Dr. Sainvil received her education at the University of Georgia, Teachers College, Columbia University, and Cornell University. She received her doctorate in counseling psychology at the University of Georgia, dual master's degrees in psychological counseling at Teachers College, and undergraduate degree in human development at Cornell. Dr. Sainvil's career thus far has reflected her commitment to working with diverse populations, providing competent and culturally appropriate psychological counseling and assessment services. Her background and areas of clinical interest have largely focused on mood disorders, anxiety related disorders, men's issues, trauma, suicide education, and prevention. So, you all help me welcome Dr. Christine Sainvil. Yay! Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm happy to be here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having, being in our presence. We appreciate it. All right, so a few more folks are chiming in, and thank you, Michael, for the condolences. We really appreciate that. My mom is here from Miami. Appreciate you, Mom, for being here. And cousin Denise is welcoming you as well, Dr.
Thank you.
Christine. Yes. All right, so tell the people. I just read a little bit about your bio and your esteemed background in education and your business, but tell us a little bit more about you. Who are you? Not what you do, but who are you?
Okay. I am from New York. I got the nice bridge behind me.
Nice.
Um, I am the oldest of three children. My parents were born in Haiti and raised in the States.
All right,
So
so
I
I
am
say.
Haitian, not Boule. So I identify as Haitian American and was born and raised in New York.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you. Well, welcome. So, what prompted you to start your business?
Um, that's a good question. Hmm, I wasn't ready for that one. So I think ever since I've been in grad school and even before grad school, I recognized that psychology wasn't really created for people of color.
Hmm.
And in school, I realized I had to adapt a lot of what we were taught to fit our community.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to have a greater impact on our community and be able to provide services to people in the community. Um, at low cost with insurance and at regular fee,
Mm-hmm.
and also be able to do trainings on diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as provide supervision to up and coming counselors. So I was like, what better way to do it by starting my own practice and creating my days to look the way I want it.
Nice. And tell me about the name Serenity and Vision.
So when I was thinking about what I wanted people to think about when they are thinking about coming to see me is serenity and peace and
Hmm.
creating the peace that we've envisioned. Because a lot of us have ideas of what we want our life to be, but how can we actually like meet that and create that peace? Because a lot of times we're steeped in our own anxieties, depressions, stressors. And so, how can a professional help me move some of those out the way so I can actually meet those goals?
Love it, love it, love it. So you are licensed in Florida and in New York. Are you taking new clients currently?
Not currently taking new clients, but I do have supervisees who I supervise that are taking clients.
Okay. All
So,
right. Well, we will share your information at the end so folks can connect with you and your supervisees. Because one of the things that we are all about on these shows, and particularly Wellness Wednesday and Mindset Monday, is trying to connect people with Black and brown folks with clinicians of color or anybody who wants a clinician of color. So trying to eliminate the stigma around mental illness and encourage folks to get their checkup from the neck up.
yes,
All
I
right.
love
Good, 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 good. All right. I want to acknowledge Marjorie, who is also Haitian America. She threw up some Haitian flags, and she's a faithful viewer. So thank you for being with us, Marjorie. And Miss Sunshine Gwen is on, who is here in Tallahassee. Thank you for being here. So before we dive in, I do have a disclaimer that I like to read, especially when I have a licensed professional on. So, my disclaimer reads that all topics, past, present, and future, on Conversations with Nicole are for informational purposes only, and they are not to be used as a diagnosis for treatment or an answer to any personal issues related to the topic being discussed before, during, or after the program. All right, I said it. All
it.
right.
Perfect.
So, hey, Susan. So let's dive in. This is a heavy topic, systemic oppression in the workplace. So let's start by defining systemic oppression. What is that?
So, when I think about it, I think about the processes and the outcomes of inequities that are built in and embedded into some of our institutional structures, into our policies, into our laws, into the ways that companies do things, and into our everyday patterns and interactions. I think when we think about systemic oppression, people think about the overt oppression that happens, but I think it's important to think about the covert, the unintentional things that are built into policies and the way things have always been done. Um, it can look like unequal opportunities or outcomes built into things intentionally, like redlining and gerrymandering, or unintentional, like policies that were created due to lack of knowledge. So I know during COVID, there was a lot of information that came up about pulse oximeters and it not being normed on Black skin. So it wasn't accurately taking oxygen levels, which can mess with how you're treated. If things aren't normed on us, then we are not adequately assessed for what's going on. If you think about the DSM, what we use in psychology, a lot of the DSM was normed on white males and females. And if you go by the criteria, it may not apply to Black and brown people. Depression and anxiety tend to look different in Black and brown people.
Yeah.
But if we are not included in some of the research, then how is it adequately assessing us?
So you are touching on something that was mentioned in your bio, actually, in terms of you being you providing culturally competent psychological services, right? And so part of that cultural competency is challenging some of these policies, is challenging the psychological Bible is what I call it. But the the manual that has the diagnosis of what people are, and as you just stated, it many of the studies were done based off of white males and white females. And
Yes.
so where does that leave the folks of color?
Right. So I have one example that always comes to mind is I did IQ testing for a while when I was in New York City for one of the programs that I worked for. And IQ testing can have a great impact on whether you're in gifted programs, whether you are labeled as special education. It has a impact on how you move and navigate through the educational system. So I will put that as a caveat. So the way IQ testing works, there are different subsections, and how many you get wrong can stop where we stop for the testing and determine and impact your IQ. So I was giving an IQ test to this young African-American boy, and one of the questions was, tell me the similarities between sour and salty. And he said, facial expressions. And I was like, yes, but can you tell me something different? But because I know the culture, because I'm aware that sour and salty can be facial expressions in the Black community, I was able to prime him to he was like, oh, another thing is their tastes. And which was the answer. But if I wasn't culturally aware, I would have stopped there, which could have impacted his overall score. So when we're not including kids from different cultures, from different backgrounds, we will miss and sometimes misdiagnose or not have accurate IQ testing.
So how do we combat that?
Well, there are more of us in the field now, right? And so as the new iterations of the DSM and the new iterations of testing comes out, having a seat at the table to talk about things that need to be included moving forward. This is why it's systemic. It's already in the system. It's not that anybody intentionally did it. It's that we weren't encompassing of everybody when we created this.
Okay. All right. So if you don't mind, if you can, just give us a recap of that definition one more time.
Okay. It refers to the processes and outcomes of inequities that are embedded in institutional structures, social structures, individual mental structures, and everyday patterns.
Wow. Again, that is a mouthful. That is heavy. So, with what has taken place in 2020, um, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and we're coming up on the anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. And it seems like George Floyd's death just kind of sent a shot around the world, where there was definitely heightened awareness around systemic oppression
Mm-hmm.
in the workplace, in just a lot of these sectors, right? In healthcare, in the judicial system, in just across the board, right? And so it's like there seemed to be an effort to try to right the wrongs,
Mm-hmm.
whether that was now every corporation has a DEI initiative and they're throwing monies towards this, that, or the other. I say this, that, or the other. Let me not say that. Specifically to maybe Black entrepreneurships or um, Black creatives, or coming up with something that would appear to be like a stay woke initiative, or that sort of thing, or even heck adopting Juneteenth as a national holiday, right? So, but now
Mm-hmm.
it seems like it's the newness is worn off.
Mm-hmm. I think the newness has worn off because a lot of the gestures that companies have done have seemed performative to people because there has been no structural change in how we hire, how we promote, who's on our board, what voices are being heard, what voices are being excluded. It's
Mhm.
one thing to put out initiatives, but how are we going to embed DEI into everything that we do? I think
Mhm.
that's the problem.
Well, and also now, certain leaders are seeking to do away with DEI.
Mhm,
Mhm.
mhm.
Um, yeah, so and we can dive into that a little more, but I do want to acknowledge some folks that have joined us. I see Miss Pumpkin here, who is here in Tallahassee, and then Lynn Jones is on. She had a comment. She said, "I agree. However, people of color must begin developing those assessments. It was intentional to keep people of color out of the mainstream of income growth."
And I agree with Lynn Jones. And I think we need to also start assessing other things other than math and science. We need to start assessing art. We need to start assessing different intelligences rather than just focusing on what has primarily been seen as smart.
Mm, gotcha. Okay. So let's talk about some ways that the oppression is experienced.
Okay. So another example that I can bring up personally is I
Hold on,
was,
we got Chubby Curls from Denver saying
yeah,
hi.
I love
Okay. Hey.
Um, so I was born in Brooklyn, raised there for 10 years, and in the school systems, we all shared books. We had to Xerox copy them. We couldn't take them
Mhm.
home because that
Mhm.
is how things were done. And
Mm.
then my parents moved us to Long Island and they gave us our books to take home. And I was like, I can't write in them. They're like, yes, you can. You take them home and you keep them. And so even just
Mhm.
access and opportunity and availability of materials, but we're all tested on the same level
Mm.
and are measured with the same criteria, but are not allowed the same opportunities,
Wow.
just like the GRE. Um, I felt like I didn't do as well as I wanted to on the SAT. So by the time I went to grad school, I was like, okay, let me take a Kaplan course.
Mm-hmm.
I put it on a credit card and I was like, okay, I'm going to take this course. And when I started the Catholic course, I got a 900. For 6 weeks, they didn't teach us the material. Nothing. I didn't learn anything new from high school, college, none of that. They
Hmm.
taught us how to take the test. They taught us how to get through the test and how to bypass doing, for example, one example that sticks out in my head is like comparing fractions.
Mm-hmm.
You do common denominator and all that. They showed us the tip and trick to do it in 3 seconds.
Wow.
And that was the whole 6 weeks. And by the end, I had a 1330. And I was like, I didn't learn anything new.
Mm-hmm. You learn how to memorize.
Because I had access to tips and tricks, I was afforded a higher grade. But a
Mm.
lot of institutions have now taken out the GRE as a criteria to get into grad school to try to mitigate some of that. But those are just some ways that it shows up in
Yeah.
our society.
Interesting. So I want to bring our viewers into this conversation. What are some ways that systemic oppression have shown up in the workplace? Either maybe you've experienced firsthand, or maybe you've had a friend or relative that has experienced it. Let us know. Let us know. Let us know. Kind of going back to the discussion around 2020 and, all of these initiatives that were put in place to kind of try to right the wrongs. Um, as you stated, they weren't structural changes. And so it appears in many regards that it hasn't stuck, right? It maybe wasn't put into policy, or if it was put into policy, who's enforcing it?
Right. Right.
Mhm,
And I
mhm,
think a lot of things went unseen. And one term that's gotten coined that has been popular is the Black tax.
mm,
The invisible tax that Black people have to do at work, whether it's educating others, whether it's, let's say I'm a Black doctor and Black patients want to come see me, which is great. Now
mhm,
I am not compensated, because if you were bilingual, you'd be compensated for that asset, correct? But I am not compensated for the extra work and the extra load while trying to keep up with all the other things that I'm doing
mhm,
um, in my workplace. And because I want to help my people, this is an extra load I have to take on invisibly and still get everything else done. That happens with professors who Black students want to be mentored by them. That takes time. They want them to be on their dissertation chairs. That takes time, but you still have to do all the other things without getting extra compensation because it is just seen as something you do. You're getting added or voluntold to be on DEI initiatives.
mm.
Sometimes people don't want to do DEI, but because you're a person of color, they volunteer you or nominate you to be on some of these panels and some of these committees.
Indeed. I see my godmom Corliss just joined us. Thank you for being here. She's down in Miami. Jerry said one way to avoid systemic oppression in a workplace. Okay, I think maybe he has some more. Tell us, how can we avoid it, Jerry? Let us know. But I really want to hear from you all, if you don't mind sharing maybe an experience that you had, or ways that systemic oppression has shown up in the workplace. Maybe you've had an experience, or someone that has had an experience around that. I think you brought up some really great points, Dr. Christina, as it relates to the, maybe if you are the only person of color, or one of very few persons of color, you become now the resident expert on the culture. And it's being Black in America is not a monolith.
Mm-hmm.
Is a diverse experience, although there are a few things that are similar, but it's gonna vary in some regards, depending on where you what part of the country you were raised,
Mhm.
what your socioeconomic status was, what your family makeup is. I mean, it's so many variables and factors to all of that. So
Mhm.
yeah, but I think I recall talking to many of my black friends, and they just being exhausted by it all.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Because there's a hypervigilance as a Black person in corporate America, having to do you're always taught you have to do twice as much to get half as far. You have to
Yep.
be twice as smart. It's a lot of pressure to
Mhm.
put on people.
Mhm.
And so it's exhausting, especially when people are looking to you to answer, okay, how does George Floyd affect the Black community? And it's like, okay, I'm going through it myself. And now I have to teach and point out all the things that are in this system that doesn't work.
Yes, 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 yes. Tracy Golay just joined us. She's here in Tallahassee. Thank you for being here. All right. Jerry said, I think one way to avoid systemic oppression in the workplace is to become a business and lead by example. So entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
That is one way.
That is.
And it is absolutely a great way to do it. One critique that I've heard from some of my friends is I'm not entrepreneurial, so how can I manage
Mm.
that? So I enjoy entrepreneurship because I do feel like it has helped me own, but I recognize that some people that isn't their thing.
Yeah, and just because you might do whatever that thing is that you like to do, cut hair, DJ, bake cakes, babysit, or what have you, does not mean that you are, fit for entrepreneurship. Because entrepreneurship is a whole nother beast. I mean, that's great that you like doing that thing, but you really need to understand business or hire some folks that do, because there's operations, there are systems that you need to set up yourself, but there's marketing, there's accounting, and all that sort of thing. So legal matters that need to be tended to. So yeah.
And it doesn't make you immune from systemic oppression because if we go into funding of Black businesses, there's still a
Mhm.
system that's impacted.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. I see Brother Kufu is joining us. Thank you for being here. He's here in Tallahassee. Marjorie had a comment. She said, as of recent, I worked the hardest in my position, producing triple the numbers of my counterpart. I was told I should, as that is the expectation for me specifically. Ooh. When I asked for time off after everyone else did, it was challenged because my work ethic. It was not a coincidence that I was the only person of color in my position. I had to deal with every escalation while every other team member was told they did not have to, as though I should be prone to handling these high stress situations. Ooh.
Mhm.
Ooh, Marjorie, I'm so sorry to hear that that has been your experience.
But it's been an experience of a lot of Black and brown people in the workplace. And
Mm,
this idea of you being resilient and you being strong. And even when you're asking for promotions, there is no clear way to
mhm,
promotions and clear way to like evening out some of the workload. Absolutely.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, eh, yeah, that is troubling. It's troubling, and I feel like again, since 2020, we have, and again, post, I'm going to say post George Floyd, okay?
Mhm.
It appears that it's almost like we've been able to exhale and kind of say what has been going on for quite some time and be comfortable, or have some level of comfortability, I'll say, in our ability to say that. But again, now, as we kind of are shifting back to normalcy, if you will. Although I feel like life is, definitely not the same as it was prior to the pandemic hitting. There's still some things that are needing to be worked through, I believe.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. It's
Hmm.
it's one thing to be able to exhale, and what are we going to do about it? That's the follow up that hasn't happened, is the what are we
Exactly.
going to do about it? Okay,
Hmm.
now that we've pointed out all of these issues, what are we doing about it? And the thing is, people have resistance to change because this is how we've always done it. Or a lot of people feel guilt in looking at structural oppression because they may feel implicit in it. Like, how did I not see this? So
Hmm.
we also have to address people's emotional reactions to systemic oppression being pointed out in a workplace.
Well, and so we also have some folks that are, uh, mm, how do I want to say this? Uh, Talking about critical race theory and not wanting to hurt people's feelings based on things that happened in history.
Hmm.
So, which is again a whole nother topic, but definitely part of what we are experiencing real time in 2023, right?
Yeah. And some of my critique to that is we repeat what we don't repair.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll keep repeating the cycles until we repair it. And some feelings being hurt versus other kids' feelings being hurt, like how do we balance that out? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
if you're told that you have to work twice as hard to get half as far, that leads in a lot of feelings of imposter syndrome. And even though it's not really imposter syndrome, it's race related stress. And
Mm-hmm.
feeling like I need to overperform. I need to, if I do something, I'm a representative of my whole group, or I'm not even included in the literature. So what does that mean? I'm not supposed to be here. What does that
Right.
communicate to me?
Yeah, I mean, all questions that have definitely crossed my mind as it relates to that whole mindset or thought pattern. All right, so we are a little over halfway in our broadcast. So I want to pause and share with those of you who may be just joining us. I am on with Dr. Christine Sainvil, and we are talking about systemic oppression in the workplace. Systemic oppression in the workplace. We've talked about the definition. We have also talked about some examples of oppression in the workplace. And this has been quite an interesting conversation. I see Miss Kiosha, who is actually based in Tallahassee, but she is in Nashville, Tennessee at this present moment, is on with us. Thank you for being here. And my sister just said, don't even get me started on CRT. My sister is a teacher in South Florida. So, which, I'm glad she said something because I've talked to other educators and it's just like, how are you supposed to navigate
Mhm.
in the classroom and having conversations and trying to teach the children if there are certain words and that you cannot say?
Mhm. Mhm. It leaves everybody on pins and needles and hyper vigilant. And am I going to lose my job? And that adds
Mhm.
an extra layer of burden and oppression. And I
Yes.
can't be myself or celebrate my identity because it offends somebody else.
Hmm. Indeed, indeed. So, what are some solutions? I mean, we've kind of talked around it a little bit, but
Hmm.
what do you believe are some solutions to the systemic oppression? I mean, one was mentioned in terms of entrepreneurship by Jerry Smith, but what do you believe are some solutions to it?
I think we first have to decide, whatever organization, like, are we really going to do the work?
Mm,
And recognize that we will have emotional reactions throughout this process and we will be challenged throughout this process. I think preparing yourself prior to doing any of the work is going to be important. Then you have to assess the system, like what voices are heard, what voices are not being heard. Who do we have at the table? Who don't we have at the table? For the clientele that we're serving, do we have a staff that is representative of this population? What do our hiring practices look like? Are we utilizing the most efficient hiring practices to get the best quality applicants? What does our promotion process look like? Is there a subjective or an objective way to get to promotion? Is it clear how people can get promoted?
So I'm going to interrupt you there just for a moment, just because of that line of questioning that you just put forth. Now, some might argue, isn't this just like affirmative action all over again, which was initially set up for white men, I believe, but it got flipped. The script got flipped such that it was a numbers game. That's what I call it, for to give minorities an opportunity.
So some of the hiring practices that we've myself and some other colleagues have talked about is de-identifying resumes, taking off the names, taking off the addresses. Let's compare people based on their qualifications. I'm taking out bias, because if I don't have the address, I don't have the name, I can't tell you where they're from. And sometimes even taking out the school name. Like let's compare people across and have panels that are diverse to do the interviews, not just having one person do the interviews, having panels so that we can have checks and balances of, okay, I don't want to hire this person. Tell me about that. What about this person makes them not a good fit? So if we have a diverse group of voices around the table, we can keep each other in check.
I like that. I have heard that before, but it's been a while since I've heard it. So I'm glad you brought that up, that de-identify resumes. I want to interject Lynn's comment. She said, as a 37-year educator, I have realized as long as I do my job and support others, life is easier. Try not to move up too fast. It takes time to groom your craft. Yeah, it does. But I've just talked to a number of teachers and professors that are very challenged, especially those in the area of history. Right? Got a whole history department. We can't say certain words because we have fear of losing our jobs.
They've cut out whole departments at universities around women and gender studies and LGBTQ studies and African American studies. It's a real thing that's happening.
Yes. Marjorie commented, she said, I know someone who used their middle name, which is viewed as less identifying, and received more callbacks the very next day. I agree with this theory. Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
So there have been practices that DEI initiatives have come up with on how we can make it more equitable. And it's about examining what we do and figuring out how we can make it better.
Indeed. Okay. All right. What else you got?
Let's see.
In terms of some solutions, like how we can address it.
So I really think representation matters, because especially in bigger corporations where the executive board may be white males or white folks, and not having people of color at the top, it creates barriers for people of color rising through the system, because there is no voice, there is no advocacy, there is no mentorship to get them to where they need. And it's important to have support as you move up the ranks, so that you learn how to navigate the politics of the system, because there's lots of politics that goes into corporations. And so mentoring is also important.
Yeah.
And being able to really hear from top to bottom people's experiences of your organization. It's not just the people at the top who have an influence on how your organization functions. And a lot of the companies that put out statements after they have done some wrong advertisement. The reason that they keep doing it is because they have no voice in the room to talk about different experiences that they may be offending.
Now, wait a minute. You can't have it both ways. First, you say you don't want to be the resident Black person. Now you talking about you don't have a resident Black person at the
But
top.
the problem is we don't want just a resident Black person. We want a
I'm
diverse group of people that
I'm
can
being
relate to.
so facetious,
Oh,
but
no, no, no. I know that. I know that. But I just wanted to make that very clear. Because that's what people will say is you don't want a resident Black person, but yeah,
Mhm.
it's about having
Right.
all the voices.
You can't have it both ways.
and it goes like even as far as if we're having interviewing processes and we don't have it for folks who are blind, folks
Mhm.
who are hearing
Maybe
impaired.
a
If we don't
neurodivergent or something like that.
right, if we don't have materials or interviewing processes that encompass that, we're not including everybody's voice. So
I know these folks probably saying life was so much easier before COVID and George Floyd.
I think a lot of people felt that way. That it
No,
was
I think
easier.
certain people feel that
Right.
way.
Certain people felt that way, but a lot of us had experienced that and had opened our experiences, and people like, I never knew you felt that way. And it was
Yeah.
just like, I knew nothing was going to be done. So why would I say anything?
And that was the point I was just about to make. You
Mhm.
know, we've probably just kind of sucked it up because it's like it's nothing is gonna come of it. This is just the way it is. And I have to accept it, or I have to start my own, or, again, become this entrepreneur. And again, like you said, you're not exempt from the oppression because of the funding biases or what have you for Black startup businesses or um, entrepreneurs seeking venture capitalists or what have you, or even funds from a bank or credit union for business loans and that sort of thing. But, I think that this has definitely started the conversation.
Mhm.
And, you know, again, hopefully this is continuing that conversation tonight, and that we are, kind of just flushing this out just a little bit more. And maybe the viewers and people that'll watch the replay will be empowered and inspired to challenge some of these systems that are in place in the various sectors that we have kind of touched on tonight.
And I think the psychologist part of me also wants to say take care of yourself as you go through this process, because it's emotionally and physically taxing.
Absolutely.
Hmm. And it has
That's
to be a safe environment for you to do it, because if it's a resistant environment, then
hmm Yeah, yeah. So you think about maybe our ancestors who went through some of the things that we're talking about, but in a much more um, discriminatory and prejudice and bias world, right? And so the trauma, the stress, the toll that it took on them, and some of them gave their lives for it, right?
hmm
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 Yeah.
yeah.
So, all right. Marjorie had a comment. She said, choosing a workplace is just that, a choice. At times, I do target and apply for a company that is run by Black and Brown community, where the Black and Brown population is 60% or higher. They are few and far between, but wish to see an increase in the near future. Indeed. Indeed. But I think another thing that this, again, 2020 has opened up the opportunity for telework,
hmm
a lot of virtual people working virtually.
hmm
Businesses have closed as a result of just not being able to recover after pandemic. But I think employers, of course, with the great resignation and, all of that took place, really recognize the power that employees have.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's power in those numbers, because if we're not showing up for work, then the business is not getting done.
Mm-hmm.
And if business is not getting done, then you may have to shut your door. So I think we definitely saw our power muscle being flexed. And so I think if nothing else, if we could come together for whatever our demands or concerns are, I think we could really see some change that is long lasting.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to get organized enough to do that sort of thing, which is what you were talking about in terms of, you know, are we what work needs to be done, really flushing that out, and are we willing to do that work?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Because one of the worst feelings is feeling like you're opening up and talking about all the problems and having hope that it's going to change, and nothing changes.
Yeah, for sure. For
And
sure.
then you may be labeled as
Mm,
being angry or whatever label. And so that's
right.
also important to be mindful of.
Mhm. It
Uh,
is. I think too, if something like that if it's formally documented, I think that employees can also document, you
mhm,
know, that
mhm,
maybe they're not in agreement with the assessment that's being made by them.
mhm,
So we have the power to do that. I just want to throw that out there because, sometimes you may not be aware of what's in your personnel file, at a particular job, or maybe you are, but you feel like there's really nothing you can do about it. But you do have a right to do a counter statement, or, put something in the file yourself.
right, right.
Mm, okay.
And I also think that's where mentorship upward and across is important,
Hmm.
so that you can have people help you navigate the terrain.
Indeed.
So yeah.
So I'm gonna again reach out to the viewers and ask, how many of you have had mentors in your workplace, or maybe not if it wasn't within your corporation or company, but maybe it was in your sector outside of your company that you could look to for some guidance or advice, or, um, as Dr. Christine said, to help you kind of navigate through the organizational behavior, organizational climate waters of whatever entity it was that you were affiliated with. So if you will, in the comments, just give us a thumbs up or thumbs down or whatever. If you have experienced a mentor, or maybe you've been a mentor to someone that has just joined the organization, you're a little um, college graduate that is, trying to figure it all out as they work through maybe a junior position or something like that. All right, my sister has her thumb up. So, have you been a mentor, Shay, or were you the mentee? All right, Marjorie has her hand raised. Mentor or mentee, Marjorie, or both? It could be both. Yeah, I think both mentors also need to be mentees as well. I think there's value on both ends. All right. All right. Lynn said Florida has an African American curriculum focused on K through 12 developed by a diverse task force. Integration is the key. The community needs to hold teachers accountable. Education starts at home. So agreed. And there are a few I think points that are being made in your comment, Lynn. I think education starts at home, but sometimes parents are not equipped,
Mhm.
right? Maybe school was not something that they, uh, yeah, it's not like their strong suit. And yeah, sometimes it's challenging. I know, I'll tell you one thing, that new math that they do, I don't know what that is. Listen, I can get you the answer, but I'm not like that. So yeah, I can't help you with that, which is horrible. At any rate, and then the community needs to hold the teachers accountable. I think specifically for the African American curriculum, because from what I understand, which I heard this most recently, and I haven't fact checked it to see if it is accurate, but of the 67 counties, because this African American curriculum is supposed to be taught statewide. So all 67 school districts throughout the state of Florida are supposed to be teaching it. I heard only 11 are doing that. So to me, that is more of an enforcement, either on a district level or on a principal school level. You know what I'm saying? In terms of, are they meeting those requirements? It's a good question. I don't know. Um, so, my sister said when I first started teaching, I had mentors who guided me through best practices in the classroom, and I have been a mentor for these past couple of years. Yes, wonderful. All right, good deal. Good deal. Good deal. All right, so we are again talking systemic oppression in the workplace and have been talking about examples of addressing um, the systemic oppression through de-identifying applications, having diverse panel interviews, having mentors, also having a clear and robust pathway to promotion, and whose voice is at the table, whose voice is missing, right?
Mhm.
And not just going along with, this is how we've historically done things.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think one thing to also add is focusing on what's in your control in
Mm,
your position.
mhm.
Because sometimes we try to tackle the whole system,
Yeah.
but focusing on what's in your control, whether you can hire more staff, whether you can mentor more staff, because trying to take on a whole system can feel daunting, and
Yeah,
so implementing your voice where you can, joining initiatives where you can see change moving forward, but also focusing on what's in your control and taking care of yourself throughout the process. That is key.
absolutely. Absolutely. Marjorie had a comment. She said both. So she's been a mentor and a mentee. She said, but I had a mentor and she was in the last generation and adopted the mentality to tolerate the systemic oppression until retirement. I did not agree. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, so there are ways that we combat it, right?
There are, and to Marjorie's point, I think we also have to have empathy on older generations that did what they could and
Mhm.
recognize that they may not have had the opportunities that we have.
Yeah.
And so their view of it is different
Mm.
because times are changing and we may have more opportunities or privilege or
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm. So she had another comment. She said, "This new generation is less loyal to remain at companies that show bias. I do believe we will see a significant shift and a close in the gap."
I agree.
Yeah, and I think as people are also, that generation is also retiring or transitioning, whether that's through physical, they're passing away or what have you, we will see more of a shift as it relates to that.
Hmm. And we're breaking generational trauma, to be
Mhm.
honest.
Yeah.
And it's going to take time.
Mhm.
And switching jobs is seen less problematic now than it was back then.
Oh, absolutely. Heck, now if you own a job for 5 years, they like, what's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
Why haven't you moved? And it used to be if you had any type of break in employment, or if you were at a job less than a certain number of years, they were looking like, well, you're in state unstable or a risk or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's so funny how these tables have turned.
They have. They
Hmm.
have. But I also think that we also have to recognize the trauma that we're not addressing.
Hmm.
There's trauma that we're experiencing now, and there's trauma that they've experienced in the past that has been passed down.
Hmm. For sure. For sure. For sure. For sure. All right. Well, we are coming to the end of our broadcast, so I definitely want to give you an opportunity. Uh, oh, wait a minute, hold on, let me pause. Chubby said these corporations ain't loyal either. No, they are not.
They
You
are
are
not.
absolutely correct, Chubby. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, yes, yes. But I want to give you an opportunity to give some closing remarks and then to share how folks can connect with you and your team.
Okay. So, my closing remarks on to how to deal with oppression in the workplace is build community, figure out how to connect with other people in your field, figure out how to make change, and empower yourself to take care of yourself. You can find me at Serenity underscore envisioned underscore PLLC on Instagram, and www.serenityenvision.com. And I've added my email and phone number. Um, yeah.
All right. Love it. Love it. Love it. Wonderful. All right. And so they can reach out to potentially get an appointment with one of your.
Trainees. Mhm.
Yes, 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 yes. All right, good deal. And the website is there. So y'all connect with her. Connect with her, connect with her. That's what this is all about. And if you need a counselor, by all means, check her out. I have seen some of your posts on Instagram, and they've been inspiring. So, I appreciate that. We need all the inspiration and encouragement that we can get.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You are so very welcome. My pleasure. So I hope this has been beneficial to the viewers. If it has, let us know by giving us some hearts or some thumbs up or some hand raises or something out there. Let us know in the comments if this has been beneficial. And I want to encourage you all to keep this conversation going. Keep the conversation going because we need to be talking about this. We spend a lot of hours on these jobs and we need to be valued in these jobs, right? We do not need to be stressed out at work. We
Mhm.
do
Yes.
not on a regular. All right. We got Miss Jeanette on here in Miami. She said retired 25 years. Very interesting topic. Thank you for being on, Miss Jeanette. All right. Miss Kiosha is giving us some claps. Thank you. My sister Shayla is clapping it up for us. We got Sister Abanichi on. She said, thank you for bringing necessary conversations to the table. Thank you for being on here, my sister. She's right here in Tallahassee. So yeah, again, this is a kind of a heavy topic, but definitely necessary. And as you said, build community within the organizations that you are affiliated with, and let's work on making a change. Let's work on making a change. We got to do it. All right. For those of you who are new to the platform, I invite you to subscribe to Conversations with Nicole on YouTube. Subscribing and supporting, and we need all the support we can get. I am on Mondays and Wednesdays at 8:30. Again, the focus is on mental health in Black and Brown communities and trying to eliminate the stigma associated with mental illness and encourage us to get our check up from the neck up. So, Please do, please do, please do. I am having tomorrow, yes, tomorrow, I am having my inaugural Conversations with Nicole musical moment, which will feature Tokyo Extraordinaire, who is an independent artist here in Tallahassee. Will be at the Signature Lounge. It starts at 7 p.m. It's free before 7, but after 7 is $15. We are recording via a studio audience. And then at 8 o'clock, we will have an after party. And so I am excited and delighted to be offering that to the community. And I invite all of you to come out and join us. There'll be a cash bar, there will be food that's offered for sale, and there will be dancing. Because guess what? I like to dance. That's my therapy. Okay. One of my therapies. And
Mhm.
so I invite you all to come out and join us. Hopefully, this will be one of a few um, uh, activities like this that we have. But this is part of me doing my own events, me kind of getting out there and, um, you know, just engaging with the community, like hands on, not just virtually. So, again, invite you all to hang out with us. All right, Kiosha wants to know, will I go live tomorrow night? I don't know about that. Maybe for a little bit, Kiosha. Maybe for a little bit. But I will tell you what we record at that 7 o'clock hour will be posted later. All right. All right, very good. All right, well, we're gonna get out y'all's hair. Y'all have a great rest of the evening. Hopefully, those of you who are here in town will see you tomorrow. And if not, y'all have a wonderful holiday weekend. Be safe, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.